January 22nd, 2025. Thanks for coming out this wonderful sunny weather day we have. So can we go with the roll call?
Mr. Amrine?
Here.
Ms. Selko?
Here.
Mr. Clapper?
Here.
Mr. De Leon?
Here.
Mr. Hook?
Here.
Ms. Rosenberg? Here. Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Here.
Mr. Sidoti?
Here.
Mr. Turner?
Here. Opening remarks, Gwen? Pledge of allegiance?
No, I don't have any remarks. Let's just do the pledge. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll go right into communication. Is there any public communication?
I don't believe so.
All right. Written communications?
Okay. On 12/27/24, the December meeting notes and January agenda for Standing Rock Cemetery were received and posted online. On 1/7/25, Ovia Blackerby submitted an application and resume for a position on the Parks and Recreation Board. On 1/10/25, the January agenda, December draft meeting minutes, and statistical report was received from the Health Department. On 1/14/25, the January agenda and staff report for the January Planning Commission meeting was received. On 1/14/25, the official list of elected officials and notification of filing requirement was received from the Ohio Ethics Commission, signed and returned.
Okay, very good. City manager's report, Mr. Amrine.
Yes, I'd like to move items 1 through 10 on the city manager's report.
Second.
Second by Gwen. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. We're going to go into our consent agenda. Would the clerk please read the...
4.1, approval of December regular council meeting minutes. 4.2, approval of January City Council Committee meeting minutes. 4.3, draft 2024-120, a resolution declaring the official intent and reasonable expectation of the City of Kent on behalf of the State of Ohio, the borrower, to reimburse its 202 sewer fund for the CG29AB, CG30AB, WRF primary clarifier number 1 rehabilitation with the proceeds of tax-exempt debt of the State of Ohio and declaring an emergency. Draft 2025-002, an ordinance authorizing the City of Kent Parks and Recreation Department to apply for grant funds in the amount of $2,069.51 and to accept the grant if awarded with corresponding appropriation of funds and declaring an emergency. Draft 2025-003, an ordinance authorizing the Finance Director, upon the issuance of a certificate of availability of funds, to pay certain purchase orders made that exceed $3,000 and declaring an emergency. Draft 2025-004, an ordinance amending Part 13 Building Code of the Kent Codified Ordinances in order to ensure consistency of the civil offense warning and/or fine in the penalty sections and declaring an emergency. Draft 2025-005, an ordinance amending Chapter 315 titled Block Parties and Street Assemblages, Chapter 316 titled Special Events, Parades, Festivals, Carnivals, Public Assemblies, etc., and Chapter 744 titled Mobile Food Unit Regulations of the Codified Ordinances of the City of Kent to update the event permit process and declaring an emergency. Draft 2025-006, an ordinance authorizing the city manager or his designee to enter into a license agreement between the City of Kent and On-Site Partners, LLC, to allow for the installation of an electric conduit line across the city and declaring an emergency. Draft 2025-008, an ordinance authorizing the City of Kent Community Development Department to partner with Main Street Kent to apply for grant funds in the amount of $100,000 and to accept the grant if awarded with corresponding appropriation of funds and declaring an emergency.
Okay, thank you. Is there any? Heidi?
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Chris. Please call the roll for suspension.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Ms. Selko?
Yes.
Mr. Clapper?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Hook?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes. Adoption,
Move adoption.
Second.
second by Chris. Is there any discussion on adopting any of these? Seeing none, please call.
Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry. Chris?
I just want to say thank you, Heather, for being here. I know I raised a little bit of a question about 4.9, but I think it's incredible that you're partnering with us to go after these grant funds. So, and thanks for being here to answer any questions.
Okay. Anybody else? Hearing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Selko?
Yes.
Mr. Clapper?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Hook?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Consent agenda passes.
Okay, thank you. Get into the standing committee. And what, is there something, Heidi?
No,
Oh.
I'm celebrating. How fast that went.
I didn't get my wine. Get into the standing committees, legislation. Committee of the whole, first on the agenda is vote for the appoint the clerk of city council.
Draft 2025-007, an ordinance appointing Kathleen Coleman as clerk of council for the city of Kent and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second, please call the roll for suspension.
Mr. Clapper?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Hook?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Ms. Selko?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second, there's no discussion. Heidi?
Oh, I just want to say welcome aboard. You know, should we vote for you? But, you know, I think that most of us have been very pleased with your ability to do the job in the, as an interim, and I feel very confident that we have a good candidate here.
Well, thank you very much.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yeah, and Kathleen, I just want to say, I've been at a lot of board meetings, and it's rare, but every once in a while, the person who is being hired gets to announce that. So savor that in history. It's a rare occurrence.
I
but-
get a little woo-hoo at the
Yeah.
end.
Any other comments? Please call the roll for adoption.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Hook?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish? Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Ms. Selko?
Yes.
Mr. Clapper?
Yes.
And draft 2025-007 passes.
Congratulations. All right, we need the board and commission for the Sustainability Commission. Somebody want to make a motion to the person running?
I'll move, is it Justine Callow,
Yes.
Yes.
for the Sustainability Commission?
Second.
Second, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Okay. I need a motion to authorize it then, I guess, or we just did that. Would the clerk read the draft?
Insert the
To insert the name.
What? Oh, okay.
I'll move to insert the
I'll
name.
second that.
Second by Jack. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you.
Draft 2025-001, a resolution to appoint Justine Gallo to the Sustainability Commission and declaring an emergency.
Move suspension.
Second.
Second by Roger. Please call the roll for suspension.
Mr. Hook?
Yes.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Ms. Selko?
Yes.
Mr. Clapper?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Move adoption.
Second.
Second by Heidi. Any discussion on adopting this? Seeing none, please call the roll for adoption.
Ms. Rosenberg?
Yes.
Ms. Schaefer-Bish?
Yes.
Mr. Sidoti?
Yes.
Mr. Turner?
Yes.
Mr. Amrine?
Yes.
Ms. Selko?
Yes.
Mr. Clapper?
Yes.
Mr. De Leon?
Yes.
Mr. Hook?
Yes.
And draft 2025-001 passes.
Okay, and we'll get a letter out to her. All right, going into community development, there's no action. Health and public safety, no action. Land use committee, there's no action. Streets, sidewalks, and utilities, there's no action. That brings us down, do we have any new business? What? Did I miss something? Oh, do we have any new business?
So, we had two.
Council members comment? Anybody? Wow. Mayor's report.
Did you want some?
Yeah, trying to find out really where we are on the warming centers. If I could get clarification on the status of what we did, because there's been some confusion expressed to me about what our position had been and whether or not where that is in the process of being perhaps brought forward.
We did make a statement about that.
Yeah, no, I'm happy to, before Bridget left for some time off, I asked her for an update, and everything's in place. Remember Anne Marie that was here on behalf of the shelter?
Right.
It was open maybe a day or two last week, but it's open all this week. And we've coordinated with PARTA. Any homeless person in Kent has to do is say, please take me to the shelter, and there's no fee. They just get taken, PARTA will take them to the shelter, and Anne Marie will house them overnight. And so that's in place. And then Anne Marie will eventually she keeps track of all those, and PARTA keeps track of those, so that at some point we'll reconcile the costs, which is fairly minimal, honestly, both for the transport, and there's a small fee that we will pay Anne Marie for the folks that were from Kent. So it's in operation, and there's transportation. So, and they've coordinated with Kent Social Services too, because a lot of times there are folks there during the day, and then before they close up, they can get transported directly to the shelter.
Okay. So it's more of an informational thing at the, yeah.
All right. I think it was pretty well addressed out to the public. Chris, you got something?
We also authorized, I think, $8,000 for for
That's what we're talking about. That is
for PARTA.
Up to $8,000.
Okay, I thought it was for lifts and Ubers and
I think
You
it's
thought it
all
was for what? I'm sorry.
taxis.
Transportation.
Oh, well, it could be, I guess, at this point. At this point, we don't have that, though.
Okay. Yeah, no.
And as Bridget said, there's not a lot of these trips, so really, PARTA should be able to accommodate it. And PARTA actually has been doing this to some extent. Anytime the county declared an emergency, they were already doing it for years. So the system is kind of in place. And then we'll see how the money ends up at the end of the year. But yes, you did. You authorized, I think it was $8,000, yeah.
I think that was a figure thrown out.
As a starting point, yeah, to test it out, like Chris said.
Yeah.
So will they be coming back to council to elaborate, clarify exactly what they're suggesting and what is in place, or is our viewpoint that we've already concluded that aspect of the
I mean, we
process?
certainly can always come back to council if it helps you. What I just said is pretty much the synopsis, so I'm not sure there's anything going to be. I think what Bridget was intending would be, as the year wraps up, let's hope sooner rather than later. I've had enough cold already. That she would come back with kind of a, here's how it went, here's how many people, here's what the costs were. And at that point too, if anybody was unserved in any way, we certainly can, that's when we can talk about other options like the taxi or the Uber or however. That is a little more complicated, and that's why we were kind of happy that PARTA was able to say, we can do it. I mean, we can do this. We already transport to the shelter. So it seemed like everything was looking like it was going to be productive. So we would come back presumably, unless you feel like there's something else to add. I know there's been some news reports on it. We've put messaging out. So I think at this point we're kind of done what we would normally do, and let's see how it goes.
I guess I was just a little unclear on what we had proposed from a council standpoint, and if there was gonna be further discussions from us, upon clarification from the, you know.
We're not planning any. I think we've told you everything we have at this point. Mike, did you?
No, I was just gonna follow up on it, because I was asked today about a warming center. And I just tried to explain what it would take to open up our own, and the problems we could occur from
Right.
that, and failed to mention the Portage County one, which I should have, which I didn't, I knew we went through that, and I knew that was in the works, but, okay, I was glad that you asked that question.
Yeah, that's why we had Anne Marie here.
Right.
There's a lot more to it, both costs and legally, that
Yeah.
really preclude what seems like a good gesture, obvious option isn't really in this case. It's complicated, so,
It's very complicated.
yeah.
Roger?
Well, I recall that we had this conversation 2 years ago, I think.
We did.
had that. And one of the issues that came up recently with me, I got a call, and they said, well, can't we just have like a pop-up warming center? I tried to explain as best I could that, as I recall, there are so many requirements by both the state in terms of the building that you're using, for the safety issues and all those various things, that the reality is that if someone in the community would like to do that, they still have to jump through all those hoops. And if you remember, the lady from the Shepherd House told us about all the hoops that she had to jump through.
That's right.
In terms of ensuring the safety of the people who are
Separation, safety,
separations,
yeah.
and they have to have patrols, and they have to have, so I think that there's way too many regulations for emergency situations. It would be nice if we could do something like that, take a vacant house and have it open, but we can't. We open ourselves up to,
And I would add, don't forget, and Bridget reminded me of this too, she said, it's a relatively smaller size homeless folks in Kent, and they know the system very well at this point. I mean, that's not to say someone new can't come along. I don't mean to sound like that. But they understand where their options are. They can stay at Kent Social Services. They can eat. They stay there during the day, and when it gets later in the day, they know that they can get a ride over to the shelter house. While us in the general public may not be as familiar with all those nuances, they did say that it's the same people year after year, and for the most part, plus or minus a few, but it's not. There aren't people who at least come in contact. Oh, and also, I'm sorry, I forgot to also add. Certainly, anytime our med units come in contact with a homeless person or get report of a homeless person in these kind of temperatures, we will transport too. We'll transport them over to the shelter house. Again, that doesn't happen often, but we do it. I feel like there was something else I was going to say too. I'm sorry Bridget's not here, because she certainly is the expert on it, but I said to her, with these temperatures, you better brief me, remind me all the things that we're doing, because I'm sure it'll come up, and I feel, I know she and Anne Marie, who I consider sort of the experts in it, feel good about where we're at. And now it's easy to get concerned, like any of us, when we don't know that those systems that are in place that they manage. But they feel like we are accommodating the folks that want to be accommodated, and it's not hard to get accommodation. So we'll find out. I mean, we'll keep asking the question, and if you hear of things, we certainly can adjust. That was the whole point. As Chris said, it was kind of the extra money was meant to help encourage Anne Marie to take more folks in and open more often, not just when the county declared an emergency, to basically open the doors in between all those times. So a work in progress, I guess.
Yeah, I'll close on this. I think that and of course it's -9, -3, 5 degrees today. You're going to get, as you indicated, expressions of concern. The issue that was given to me was, quite frankly, they didn't understand where the city was. And I said, well, there was a meeting held, probably go back and look at the meeting tape, you know, whenever we were discussing it. And to my memory, which is flagging at best, I thought that we expressed total concern and support for the concept, not the concept, but the function of warming centers, but there was issue of liability which really jumped up and probably created a number of issues. Because my deal was through ignorance. You know, why don't we just set one up in Kent? Well, then
Sure.
Anne Marie explained exactly what the circumstances, what existed, the implications for that. But I told them everybody on council was concerned, and that we expressed an interest and actually went to try to ensure that we did something to help people who are in Kent, and we thought that we ought to actually put something on the table too. And so the $8,000, I couldn't remember the exact figure, but that indicates, and I just want to make sure that we get that out, that we're concerned about this. I mean, and it wasn't 0 degrees when we started discussing it. We were trying to get all, but we can't control the timelines and what's going on there. But we're working on it, still working on it, and when we get the additional evidence of what's transpiring, then we can probably even do.
I think the answer for anybody that gets asked is the county runs a good shelter, and we've guaranteed payment to PARTA for any homeless person to get there. So rather than building for all the reasons Roger mentioned, you mentioned, the challenges of building our own multiple centers around, we guarantee transportation. All you have to do is get on a bus and say, please take me to the shelter. And for those that are at social services, they can coordinate directly through that. And then for the few that don't get there, we can transport with our EMS med unit. So there's a shelter in place that'll work. We've guaranteed payment to get people there.
Thank you.
You know, Robin, I think we got a program in place. You know, come spring when the flowers are blooming, we might want to evaluate, see what worked and what didn't work, if we could make it better. So, Roger,
Yeah, I just want to say that at the risk of being Pollyannish, you know, in this political climate the last couple of years, it's nice to hear that people are caring about the less fortunate. I think sometimes we tend to paint it with a broad brush, and we think everyone is, you know, is cold-shouldered, and I think everyone does care. And based on the phone calls I've got, I think the people who are calling weren't calling to complain; they were calling because they care about what's going on with people who are less fortunate than probably every one of us in this room. So, again, not to be Pollyannish, that bodes well. That I think that's a good sign.
anybody else? Chris?
I know last year we brought up quite a few times, and Melissa would love your input, but on the idea of a levy for Parks and Rec. And I know that we're 2 months from a primary, and then so just wondering around timing, if that's something we want to do this year.
We're not at the point where we're recommending a levy versus other options.
Okay. I didn't know if that was where
so. And we haven't even brought to you guys yet, right? I mean, that's your question. Like, there's going to be some lead time on this because,
where's the one we win?
Our objective is to have some good, solid discussions with some thoughts about what the options should be before, and have some voting by the end of the year. I mean, that's kind of the general time frame. We're not in an emergency where we've got to get this done this year. But we also don't want to keep waiting until we get into emergency. It is getting tighter for Parks and Rec because their levies they don't change with the times. So they stay flat and everything else goes up. And we know that. And you know, we've had their master plan projects in here, and I think everyone gets excited about that until there's no there. There's no way to fund it, right? I mean, that's the problem. And So we've kind of made a commitment to Angela and council to come up with some options. Rhonda and I have had a few conversations on this. A levy is certainly one.
Yeah.
But,
Income raise, yeah.
yeah,
Levy
there's
raise.
different ways of getting at this, and we'll try to be sensitive to just the climate, the financial situations, and then our own economic situation. So, thanks for asking. It's still in progress. So, yeah.
Great. Yeah, you know, I think there is a cost to waiting too long, not just to the Parks and Rec, but also to just who might move here and who might not, depending on what they might see coming up in building or coming up in offerings. I say that as a dad of a 2-year-old who needs a splash zone, like. So yeah, I'm as anxious as anyone to kind of see what's the next step there.
Anybody else? The only thing I got out of the mayor is happy birthday, Robin, yesterday.
Happy birthday.
Oh, thank you.
Happy
One
birthday.
again?
Actually 18.
You've gone back.
With that
But
said,
thank you.
we're adjourned.